Hello and welcome to Humstick Plays Raid Shadow Legends free to play day number 5. Now in today's episode we're going to start talking about one of the basic but most important factors of Raid Shadow Legends, and that is your gear. Now gear is a very simple aspect of the game. You put it onto your champions get better, but it's also a very important part of the game. It's one of those easy to learn, takes a little bit more to master kind of aspects of the game, because depending on what stats you put on your champion can take you from being progressing in strength to becoming very powerful. So you need to make the right choices for what's best suitable for your character. Now each champion gets put in certain roles: attack, defense, HP or support. Now this is an indicator of what sort of stats you want to be looking for your champion, but do make sure you check the skills of the champion before you start gearing them up, because even though a champion might be I think there's one that it says it's a HP champion, but all its skills scale off of attack, so building an HP wouldn't actually make it deal any more damage, but putting the stats into attack would. So first of all, I will talk about the weapon. Your weapon, its primary stat is attack. That's it. It's just a flat attack stat. It'll never change, no matter how much gear you collect, no matter how high the star level is, it will always be attack. Now that goes the same for the helmet and the shield, apart from the helmet has HP and the shield has defense. All of these items will always have that same starting stat, but the secondary stats that they can get, that's where it starts varying. So that they can have the flat stat of the primaries of each one there, the other artifacts, or they can have the percent stat, which gives you a much higher increase to your stats than what the flat stat does itself. Alongside that, they can also get speed, crit rate, crit damage, resistance and accuracy. Now speed is probably the most important stat of the game. This is what determines how fast you go and how fast you get to your next turn during a fight. So as you get later on into the game, speed will be on every piece of gear that you get. And crit rate, it is best off on anyone you want to deal some damage, as the more crits you get, the more damage you're going to deal per hit. So getting your damage dealers up to 100% crit rate will give you more damage per hit than in what it would just pumping all your stats into attack percent. Then combine that with a crit damage stat, which increases the amount of damage your critical hits deal, is an even bigger damage output per hit. And if you've got someone you want to be tanky and a meat shield, absorb a lot of damage and debuffs, racking the defense up and equipping them with resistance to help prevent the debuffs from being placed on them, is a good way to go. Obviously resistance stat comes handy there. And then if you have anybody who places debuffs onto the enemy, then you want to have an accuracy stat on that champion, as accuracy determines your chance of landing your debuffs onto a target, and they go in counterbalance to each other. So the higher resistance your target has, the more accuracy you need to be able to land your debuffs onto that target, and vice versa. If an enemy's going to place a debuff on you, you need more resistance to stop them from landing their debuffs onto you. Next up is gauntlets or gloves. So in this slot, the primary stat can be flat HP, attack or defense. If the gear you get ever has them on, just sell them straight away. They are not worth your time or your silver in leveling up. Then you can have HP percent, attack percent or defense percent. All these are helpful stats if you want survivability for your character. Attack percent is not very useful. Me personally, I always sell my attack percent gloves as well, and that's because you can get crit rate or crit damage on as a primary stat for your gloves. Now if you want a damage deal that bases off attack, you'll get more damage coming from crit rate or crit damage stat on as a primary stat on the gloves than you would with an attack percent stat. So the top, probably the top 4 for your gloves would be crit rate or a crit damage stat on the for any damage dealer you have. And if you want someone with survivability, I would go either HP percent or defense percent. As a reminder that the HP percent, the more HP your character has, the less of a priority he becomes to the enemy AI. So if you've got a support champion that you want to be a low target, it's highly recommended putting a HP onto that champion rather than defense, because the more HP, the less chance they are going to be targeted, so it means they can do more to support your team. If you want someone to be a tank and a meat shield, it's better to put defense percent on that champion, as their health will be lower but they can resist a lot more damage, so they will become more of a focus to the enemy and they will take the hits for your weaker teammates. The secondary stats that you can get on this are fly HP, HP percent, attack percent, defense percent, crit rate, crit damage, accuracy, resistance and speed. All your fundamental stats. Now remember, on your gear you can only have 4 substats at a time, so picking the ones that you need wisely is important. So you want to have substats that complement the primary stat itself. So you don't want to be having a defense gauntlet and then putting attack percent on as a substat, because if your champions want to be defensive and scales his damage off defense percent, that attack percent substat is going to be rendered useless. So if you wanted to have a defensive champion as well as a bit of damage output, I'd go for a crit rate substat, crit damage substat, accuracy substat, resistance or speed, or even HP, just to give them a little bit more survivability. The substats are the same for the chest plate, and the primary stats are the same for the chest plate, but apart from instead of having crit rate and crit damage, you will now be able to get an accuracy primary stat, so it makes it even easier for your debuffers to land their debuffs, or a resistance substat, which is more of an end game arena stat to be looking for to try and resist the arena debuffs coming from the arena teams. When it comes to boots, you have a variety of primary stats, but 99.9% of the time when it comes to boots, you're going to want to have speed as your primary stat. As I mentioned earlier, speed is the king of stats. It's the best stat that you can use to improve your champion, as getting more turns quicker is more vital than dealing damage in one hit. You can deal more damage in 2 turns at a faster rate than you would if you just dealt 1 hit to an enemy that was a big hit. Not only that, but in getting your turns around faster, it reduces the speed, the wait time for your cooldowns to refresh, as you're getting your turns quicker than the enemy does, so you'll get your cooldowns up sooner. Then as you get into later game and you want some slightly slower champions, you can start looking at specific specialised builds where you can swap out speed for the other stats, but that's very end game mentality, and right now it's all about getting that speed up. When it comes to accessories, you have the ring. The ring is just a flat stat like the health stat of the helmet, or the attack stat of the weapon, defense stat of the shield. You can get just flat stat the same on a ring, and then the secondary stats are either the flat stat or the percent stat of those basic stats, HP, attack or defense. For the amulet, it's the same. You get a flat stat on your primary stat for attack, defense and HP, but you can also get crit damage. Now this is a vital stat for your damage dealers. Being able to give them an extra crit damage boost means that you can put out a lot more damage. So if you've got a damage dealer, you always want to be trying to get a crit damage amulet onto that character. And then you follow up with secondary stats of HP, attack, defense, accuracy, resistance or crit damage. For the banner you can get a primary stat of accuracy or resistance, as well as the basic stats of HP, attack and defense. Now for a debuffer, you want to look for an accuracy banner, and if for a tank you want to look for either defense or resistance if you want to resist a lot more chance of resisting debuffs. Once you've got the understanding of all the primary stats and what you want to do, that's where you start considering sets, but we will speak about that in another video at a later date. But right now I just want you to look at the gear on your champions and don't worry so much about sets. I know sets look good on your champions, but it's not the key to improving your characters. Now, the lifesteal set that you get early game, that comes in handy massively for your starter champion. So putting 4 pieces of that on, they've always got stats that help the starter champion, so you're leveling them up, it's always going to be helpful to your champion, so you can put that on without any worries. Then after that you want to just look at what gear you've got and look at how to best build a champion of your own. So always look at speed for your speed boots. Start there, find your speed boots that you want to put on, and then start considering your substats. Consider for a defensive champion you want defense percent, resistance, accuracy if they've got debuffs, HP to boost a bit of HP. This is all percentage wise. And then you want to go to your armour, you want to look at defense armour to make them more resistant. And then gauntlets, if they're going to be a good damage dealer you can put crit rate on them or crit damage. If they're just solely there to tank an enemy, go for more defense, go for your defense percent. This way of thinking makes it a lot easier for you to gear your characters and to improve them without trying too hard to match up sets. And it's more like a puzzle, but you're not creating a picture. So once you get further into the game, that's when you can start looking at getting sets of the stats that you want. But same as with rarity as well. So looking at the rarity of your items, there's rare and epic, uncommon, common, legendary. The rarity of the item isn't as important as what the star level of the item is. So a common 5-star piece of armour with HP percent is a lot better than a 2-star piece of armour with HP percent that's legendary, because the HP boost you get from the primary star is hugely greater than what the 2-star gear is. So when you're looking for your gear, always look for the stats that you need and a higher star level of the gear, rather than looking for the rarity. The rarity only affects the starting amount of substats that you get. So yeah, it gives you a sneak peek at the substats, what's on it, and you've got a start out of substats straight away from it being at level 1. But you're not equipping that piece of gear just for its substats. You're equipping that piece of gear for the big boost it gives you on its primary stat. So always look at that first and then follow down with your substats. One more thing I want to point out is when you're leveling your gear up, level them up in 4s. So when you're leveling your gear, you will get either a new substat or you will upgrade a substat every 4 levels. So a common piece of gear starts with no substats at all. At level 4, 8, 12 and 16 you will then gain all 4 substats. By that point, you have 1 substat per 4 levels. If you have an item which is a legendary piece of gear, it will start off with the 4 substats. And then leveling it up in 4s, it will then re-roll a boost to a stat, 1 single stat on those substats. And that's where the game gets a bit more intricate, because once you get into the later stages of the game, you'll be looking to get substats on your gear that you want, and then trying to get the rolls as well onto the stats of that substat you want. So if you get a piece of gear, say gloves which have crit rate, they have speed as a sub-stat, attack percent as a sub-stat, and then HP percent as a sub-stat. Them crit rate gloves then roll 3 lots of speed on them up to level 12. That's an amazing stat. Rolling the speed on that gear 3 times and getting a big speed boost makes them a very good piece of gear that will last you very far into the game. Now, one last note to make is for leveling gear to 16. Leveling gear to 16 is a massively expensive investment, and I highly recommend only leveling gear to 16 when either you are completing a challenge, completing a progress mission, or when you're trying to get rewards from artifact enhancement events. Any other time, do your best to hold off leveling gear to 16. You could burn through millions of silver just to try and get a piece of gear to 16. You don't even realise it, especially now that there is an instant enhancement. So just before I go, I'll just quickly mention about the masteries. So with your first 800 gems, you will want to save them up and buy the masteries for your starter champion. Your starter champion is key to the progress in all areas of the game as you start out. Now, as you can see, as I'm using Aethel, I'm going for the offense tree and the defense tree. This is to max out my damage output and my survivability, as she's just basically going to be my bruiser, damage and take a few hits. If you're using Kale or Gaelic, I'd recommend taking the offense tree and the support tree to raise your accuracy so you can land your debuffs. If you're using Elhain, do the same as I'm doing, go down the offense tree and the defense tree. One thing to point out is with your champions, you want to work down the offense tree, and your final mastery, you want to have either War Master, which will be good on Elhain, Kale and Gaelic, or if you've got Aethel, you'll want to go for the Giant Slayer. These masteries will hugely increase your damage output against bosses, targets with more health. The more health the target's got, the harder you're going to hit them, and also hugely increase your damage per turn against the clan boss, which is vital because clan boss progression is one of the easiest ways to start getting good items for the game, such as reg special gear, shards and skill tomes, not to mention gems. And that's everything for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed watching and learned plenty about artifacts and then just a little snippet about masteries there. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below.